What is up, guys? It's Drac, and today we're doing the Battle of the Behemoths, the biggest, the baddest, the rival blasters. So weird how these blasters keep getting condensation every time I bring them out. Something about the hollow tanks and the clear plastic. Anyway, this is obviously a Nerf rival Nemesis. It is the biggest, baddest blaster of 2017, and then this is the Adventure Force Quantum by Dart Zone. Now, very similar blasters, so we'll do a size comparison first, but like I do want to just kind of announce or at least acknowledge the inherent thing that needs to be acknowledged. Why do they look so similar? Well, this one came first, and this one is clearly designed to compete with this one. So when you hear my final conclusion, I want you to keep in mind that in the spirit of fair play, this blaster is definitely like an iterative work on this blaster in some way. Like, it's impossible even at separate rival companies to not take design inspiration from another blaster, fix things that were received poorly, and then make it better. Now, not only was it made better in some ways, it was also made significantly less expensive, so we'll talk about that as well. As of the time of this video, actually, no. This was released at an MSRP of 100 United States dollars, and you had to do some wheeling and dealing to get it cheaper in any way, frequently with a buy two, get one free thing, making it wind up costing a little over 70. So, this one, on the other hand, has MSRP'd at 50 United States dollars. You can find it at 50 United States dollars, and I highly think that it will also have some sales upon its release, where like somewhere down the line as we get closer to holidays, or even just in the coming couple of months, perhaps even later this month, as this is launching in August, I believe, this blaster should have a sale which will knock it down closer to the $40 margin. So that being said, this one is, we're going to use, for the sake of argument, half the price of this one. Now, let's launch into it. What are the primary differences? Well, when we pick them both up, you can see lengthwise, here, we'll set them up this way. We'll put both muzzles on the ground, virtually identical in length, with the Quantum being a little bit longer. Now, space between back of handle and stock in this case is almost exactly pinky to thumb, and then here it's a little bit shorter, so you get more stock with Sauron than you do, I'm gonna call it Sauron, with the Nemesis than you do with the Quantum. The reason that we're using modified versions of these blasters is this is a mod channel, and we're gonna make things better no matter what. So we'll start by telling the story stock. So stock, very similar. The Quantum performs a little bit better stock. It has slightly higher FPS, but it does come with 25 less rounds, which is worth mentioning in that price. This only ships with 75, whereas at least this did ship with 100. Now, both blasters hold 100, so as long as you're buying more ammo for them, they both fit 100 rounds. They both have a fully removable hopper. They are both fully automatic flywheel blasters. The biggest difference, and the reason that I think some people should certainly choose a Nemesis in these day and age, is right here. So this is the Rev Switch for an Adventure Force Quantum, and this is the Rev Switch for a Nemesis. Now, that's pretty cut and dry. That's pretty stupid proof. Like, this is an actual Rev Switch, this is not. So that's the biggest disadvantage. Other than that, they both have a safety mechanism which has been fully disabled on both of them, modified, and they both have these removable hoppers, this one removing like this one removing like this, and then just popping out. Now, the retention mech on both of them is pretty good. You never want to grab these blasters by their hopper, either or. Now, in my review of the Quantum, I mistakenly did not think that it had an agitator, because when I pulled the hopper out, I took a look at it and I was like, wow, that's really weird and kind of obnoxious that there's no agitator mechanism here. Whereas on the Nemesis, if you look, it is clearly an agitator system in there. The whole system drops in, and those almost camshaft looking things agitate the rounds up. So that was pretty obvious. That was a mistake of mine. The agitator is this little flipper mech in here, and you'll see it flips this, which actually acts as the agitator. Both are equally effective. Neither is necessarily better than the other one. Both are pretty aggressive when modified, but since the drivetrains are matched to the agitators, they require they get a little aggressive. Now, both blasters have pretty much inherently the same battery tray. They both cost the same to power if you're using standard D cells, but both of them in this video are running off of small 3S LiPo packs, and neither have foam dampening, so they're both gonna be loud. Now, the only other feature I can think of that's worth mentioning is that the Nemesis has a tactical rail. It has a tactical rail built into the top, and the Quantum does not. I have never seen anyone put anything on the tactical rail on a Nemesis. Most people just carve this off and put some sort of monstrous hopper add-on onto this. If anything, most people lock their hoppers on permanently in that way. Now it's time to start talking about why I would choose the Quantum over the Nemesis. If you look here side by side, the Quantum is actually far more comfortable. Its foregrip is nicer. My hand wraps around it cleanly. That's 3 fingers here and then my thumb here. Whereas with the Nemesis, you do the same thing, but you have to stretch a little bit further just because it's chunkier. It's not rounded like this. Now, the shape and I guess detailing on both blasters, at first you want to give it to the Nerf blaster just because Nerf blasters use higher quality plastic, and of course Sauron has a full vampire hydro dip and looks pretty slick that way. But honestly, it's got really good lines on both blasters. There's significantly more orange on the Quantum, which is a downside for some and an advantage for others, and you don't get all of these vents, but you do get the full circle kind of disc plate to change your T mount, which lets you break up that paint job a little. You get a back plate back here. Both have interesting battery trays, but I mean, like, there's paneling, there's vents. It's just not quite as deep in some places, and probably a little bit cheaper to machine, which is why we get more out of this. Now, the reason that my conclusion for this video is you should buy a Quantum over a Nemesis is at half the price, with full modification, you turn both of these into a 2-switch setup. In Sauron, the switches are here, and that's so that this is Rev and this is Fire. On the Quantum, I built a dual stage trigger live on my Twitch, which is linked down below if you ever want to check out live Nerf modding. But the dual stage trigger lets you pull here to Rev and then a little bit further to Fire. Now, my Quantum gets FPS of about 135 on average, and Sauron breaks FPSs of about 122 on average. That could be something to do with flywheel concavity. It could be something to do with flywheel crush. It could even be something to do with the motors, although I think the motors are very similar. But higher FPS performance, same capacity, better ergonomics, more comfortable stock as this is rounded and this is flat. I ultimately, like, just from an objective performance player perspective, try saying that 3 times fast, I have to give it to the Quantum. And honestly, I really like the dual stage trigger, which probably has an impact on my performance or rating, but like, it forced me to solve a problem in a way that I find ergonomically comfortable, because this handle is so much nicer than Sauron's. Like, Sauron's handle, you only really get to put pressure on with your 2 bottom fingers because you need to be able to feather that Rev trigger. This one, you get a good strong grip like this, and all you have to do is focus on your on pulling the trigger. But I like the Quantum modified. They're very similar blasters. The performance of this one is slightly higher, but you could add a Rev trigger. I think that kind of, it goes either way. It's really just a preference thing. The dual stage is definitely my preference personally, but I got to give it to the Quantum for 40 bucks or 40 or 50 bucks, depending upon what you buy yours for, plus $5, $6, $7 in materials, plus that foam blast motor. Like, this is, in my opinion, a more comfortable primary that hits a little bit harder than the Nemesis. Now, it did have the advantage of being second to market. It does have the advantage of not being the first one that I modified ever, but if you recall, Sauron isn't the first one I modified ever either. My only regret is that this is like a 2-hour quick paint job with a 4-hour live stream modification, and this is probably a 20-hour project with full detailing and deco designed to be debuted at End War I. This is probably a more beautiful blaster than this, but I can't just swap the paint jobs lickety-split. So I might be even building another Quantum in the future, maybe one with a Rev Switch, but for now, I've got to give it to the Quantum. Like, normally at the end of these versus videos, I tell you, like, it's totally a preference thing, but like, if your preference is having more money in your pocket at the end of the day, I would go with the Quantum. I think that they both mod up nicely. Now, if you're going to buy one stock, all right, here's the addendum. If you're gonna buy one stock, get a Nemesis. The rev trigger is tough to beat and makes for a far more palatable user experience than trying to figure out how to flip this switch with your thumb. But overall, I like the Quantum a lot more. It's ergonomically superior, it hits a little bit harder, and everything else in my mind is the same. So thank you guys very much for watching. You can find a link to both blasters in the description box below. Both links support the channel. And as always, much love, Nerf on, Drac out.